The morning alarm shrieked through the dormitory like a dying animal, and Maya Chen knew exactly what came next. She pulled her thin blanket over her head and counted the seconds. 10, 20, 30. The door burst open with a metallic screech that made her teeth ache. Heavy footsteps thundered across the floor, followed by the familiar sound of wings being dragged from beds. The Zephyrian guards moved through the room like a plague, their massive forms casting shadows that swallowed the pale morning light. "Up, dirt crawlers!" Senior Guard Vexter bellowed, his voice like grinding stone. His forearms moved with practiced efficiency, hauling the winged prisoners from their beds. "Today you learn your place again." Maya kept still, hoping they might skip her. She was the only human in Block 7, the only one without wings to break. Sometimes that saved her. Sometimes it made things worse. A massive claw wrapped around her ankle and yanked her from the bed. The concrete floor rushed up to meet her face, and stars exploded behind her eyes as her cheeks scraped against the rough surface. "Especially you, monkey," Vexter snarled, using the slur that all humans had earned in the Galactic Union. "You think you're special because you have no wings to clip. We have other ways to remind you what you are." Maya pushed herself up slowly, tasting blood from where she'd bitten her tongue. Around her, 23 other prisoners stood in ragged formation. The aviacs with their colorful feathered wings, the draconis with their leathery membranes, the seraphim with their gossamer appendages that caught the light like spider webs. All of them bore the same marks, wings that had been systematically broken and rebroken, healing just enough to feel the next round of pain. This was the Reformation Center on Kepler 442b, though everyone called it the clip joint. The Galactic Union's most efficient facility for breaking the spirits of species they deemed flight risks. The irony wasn't lost on Maya that they'd stuck her here despite her complete inability to fly. "Form ranks," Guard Lieutenant Zephyra commanded. Her voice was smoother than Vexter's but twice as cold. She was Seraphim, one of the beautiful angel-like beings that ruled the skies of a dozen worlds. Her own wings were pristine, untouched, marking her as one of the chosen few who served the system rather than suffered under it. Maya fell into line between Kresh, a young aviac whose green wings had been broken so many times they hung at odd angles, and Thane, a draconis whose left wing membrane was more scar tissue than skin. Neither looked at her. Solidarity was a luxury they couldn't afford. "Today marks your 643rd day of reformation," Zephyra announced, packing in front of the formation with fluid grace. "Most of you have shown remarkable improvement in understanding your proper place in the galactic order. Your criminal tendencies toward unauthorized flight have been corrected." Maya bit back the urge to laugh. Criminal tendencies. Half these people were here for flying without permits in their own atmosphere. Others had committed the grave sin of using their wings for non-approved activities. A few, like Thane, had been caught helping grounded species reach high places without proper authorization. "However," Zephyra continued, her silver eyes scanning the group, "some of you still harbor delusions of superiority, still believe that wings make you special, still think that flight is a right rather than a privilege granted by your betters." Her gaze lingered on Maya. "And some of you seem to think that having no wings makes you exempt from learning respect." The daily ritual began. Each prisoner stepped forward when called, extended their wings, and received their correction. The guards used neural inhibitors that sent pain directly to the flight muscles without causing visible damage. Clean, efficient, repeatable. Maya watched Kresh step forward first. The young aviac's hands trembled as he spread his damaged wings. The inhibitor touched his shoulder blade and he screamed. His wings spasmed, trying to fold, trying to escape the agony that felt like liquid fire in his bones. After 30 seconds that felt like hours, Kresh collapsed to his knees, gasping. "Better," Zephyra noted, making a mark on her tablet. "The defiance in your eyes is almost gone. Tomorrow we'll finish the job." One by one, they stepped forward. One by one, they screamed. Maya counted their pain, memorized their faces, stored away every detail of what was being done to them. She'd been doing this for over a year now, and she'd learned that the guards expected her to look away, expected her to show disgust or fear or pity. She gave them nothing. When her turn came, Zephyra studied her with those silver eyes. "The monkey thinks she's brave," the seraphim said softly. "Thinks watching makes her strong. Shall we test that theory?" Vexter stepped forward with a different device. Not a neural inhibitor, but a pain amplifier designed for species without flight organs. Maya had felt it before. It turned every nerve ending into a live wire, made breathing feel like swallowing molten metal. "Any last words of defiance, dirt crawler?" Vexter asked. Maya looked him in the eye. "Yeah, your technique is getting sloppy." The pain hit her like a falling star. Every cell in her body caught fire simultaneously. Her vision went white, then black, then white again. She felt herself falling but couldn't tell which way was down. The agony went on, a symphony of suffering that played every nerve like a violin string. But she didn't scream. She bit through her tongue to keep quiet. Blood filled her mouth, and she swallowed it rather than give them the satisfaction. When the pain stopped, she was on her knees, but her eyes were still open, still defiant. "Remarkable," Zephyra murmured. "Most humans break after the first week. You've lasted over a year, and you still think you're proving something." Maya spat blood on the floor between them. "I'm not proving anything, I'm just waiting." "Waiting for what?" Maya smiled, and the blood on her teeth made it look like a predator's grin. "For you to make a mistake." The guards laughed. Even some of the prisoners looked away in embarrassment. Everyone knew humans were the weakest species in the Union. No natural weapons, no flight capability, no psychic powers, no technological advantages. They'd been conquered in less than a decade when first contact was made, and now they served as laborers, servants, and object lessons in the futility of resistance. But Maya Chen knew something they didn't. Something that no human had told the Galactic Union during their quick surrender. Something that her species had kept hidden even under the worst interrogations and mind probes. Humans might not have wings, but they had something else. Something that had taken them from caves to space in just a few thousand years. Something that had made them the apex predators on a death world where everything bigger, stronger, and faster than them had gone extinct. Humans had spite, and Maya Chen had been collecting it for over a year. That night, as the other prisoners slept fitfully in their narrow beds, Maya lay awake and planned. She'd been watching the guards' routines, memorizing their shift changes, noting their weaknesses. Vexter favored his right side because of an old injury. Zephyra's perfect posture was maintained by spinal implants that could be disrupted with the right electromagnetic pulse. Guard Zixmoth had a gambling addiction and was skimming from the commissary funds. The Reformation Center was designed to break spirits, not contain actual escape attempts. The Galactic Union had never encountered a species that got more dangerous the more you hurt them. They thought pain was a deterrent rather than motivation. Maya rolled over and looked at the small ventilation grate near her bed. For months, she'd been working on loosening the screws during the night shift. Not to escape the planet's surface was a frozen wasteland, but to access the facility's maintenance tunnels. From there, she could reach the communication array, the power grid, even the armory. Tomorrow would be day 644. The guards would break more wings, deliver more pain, crush more spirits. They'd look at Maya and see a stubborn human who refused to learn her place. They wouldn't see the predator studying them. They wouldn't notice that she'd stopped flinching when they hurt the others, that her eyes tracked their movements like a hunter watching prey, that every act of cruelty they performed was being cataloged, analyzed, and added to a growing debt that would eventually come due. Maya Chen closed her eyes and dreamed of the day when the guards would learn what humans did to things that caged them, what they did to things that hurt their friends. What happened when you spent over a year teaching a human exactly how much pain a living being could endure? The Galactic Union had made a single, critical error in their assessment of humanity. They'd confused submission with planning. Tomorrow, Maya would begin collecting on that mistake. The maintenance tunnel was darker than the space between stars, but Maya had been crawling through it for 3 weeks now. Her fingers knew every bolt, every pipe, every junction by touch alone. Tonight was different. Tonight, she carried something that would change everything. The electromagnetic pulse device had taken her 2 months to build from scraps. Components stolen from broken tablets, wire harvested from damaged light fixtures, and a power source cannibalized from her own bed's heating element. It wasn't pretty, but it would do exactly what she needed it to do. Maya paused at Junction 7 and listened. The night guards were making their rounds, their heavy footsteps echoing through the facility's corridors. She'd timed their patrol routes down to the second. In exactly 4 minutes, Guard Captain Mordun would pass directly underneath her position. His cybernetic spine enhancement made him nearly impossible to take down in a fair fight, but Maya hadn't been planning anything fair. She positioned the EMP device against the tunnel floor and activated the timer. 3 minutes, 50 seconds. That would give her enough time to reach the communication center and begin phase 2 of her plan. The device hummed to life, barely audible even in the silence. Maya crawled forward through the tunnel system, moving like liquid shadow toward her target. Behind her, she left the first bomb in what would become a very educational evening for the Reformation Center staff. The communication array was housed in a separate building connected to the main facility by an enclosed walkway. Maya had studied the schematics during her brief work detail in the administrative wing, memorizing every detail while pretending to mop floors and empty trash bins. The guards thought giving her menial tasks was another form of humiliation. They hadn't realized they were providing reconnaissance. Maya dropped down from the tunnel into a storage room filled with cleaning supplies. The chemical smell was overwhelming after weeks of recycled air, but it covered her scent in case any of the guards had enhanced olfactory senses. She checked her stolen chronometer. 2 minutes until the EMP detonated. She moved through the storage room to a maintenance door that led to the communication center's basement. The lock was electronic, but Maya had learned to bypass it weeks ago using techniques she'd picked up from Zixmoth's gambling buddies. The Twi'lek had a weakness for bragging about his criminal past when he thought no one was listening. The basement hummed with the sound of servers and processing units. Maya made her way to the central communication hub, a massive console that handled all incoming and outgoing transmissions for the facility. This was where the daily reports were sent to Union Command, where supply requests were processed, where emergency calls would be routed. Maya smiled as she began connecting her homemade device to the system's main data port. The Union's mistake had been assuming that humans were primitive because they'd been conquered quickly. What they'd failed to understand was that humans hadn't fought back with everything they had. Earth's governments had surrendered to preserve the species, but they'd done something else too. They'd hidden their smartest minds in plain sight. Maya Chen wasn't just another broken prisoner in a galactic detention facility. She was Dr. Maya Chen, former head of cybersecurity for the Pan-Asian Digital Defense Network. She had 3 doctoral degrees in computer science, had designed virus protection software for half the world's governments, and had spent her career thinking of new ways to break into systems that people claimed were unbreakable. The Union had captured her during a refugee convoy evacuation. She'd been helping families escape the occupation zones when their transport was intercepted. To the guards, she was just another human worker bee. They'd never bothered to check her background, never wondered why she was so calm during processing, never questioned why she adapted to captivity so quickly. Now, as her fingers danced across the communication console's interface, they were about to learn what humanity had really lost when they'd captured her. The EMP device detonated right on schedule. The lights in the communication center flickered as power was redirected to compensate for the overload in the main facility. Emergency alarms began blaring in the distance, and Maya could hear the guards shouting as their equipment failed. She worked faster. The virus she was uploading was a masterpiece of malicious code, designed to look like a routine system update while it spread through the Union's military networks. It would take weeks to fully activate, months to trace back to its source, and by then it would have infected thousands of systems across dozens of worlds. But the virus was just the beginning. Maya activated her stolen communicator and sent a coded message on a frequency she'd memorized years ago. 3 words that would mean nothing to anyone monitoring the transmission, but everything to the right people. The rabbit hole. Somewhere in the darkness of space, a message would be received by Captain Sarah Martinez aboard the merchant vessel Defiant Horizon. Sarah would pass it along to Commander Chen Wei on Luna Station. Chen Wei would contact Director Elizabeth Kovach on Mars, and Director Kovach would activate something that had been waiting patiently for over a year. The Terran Resistance Network had never disbanded after the surrender. It had simply gone underground, hidden in plain sight among the millions of human workers scattered across Union space. They'd been waiting for a signal, for proof that humanity's spirit hadn't been broken by occupation. Maya finished uploading her surprise packages to the Union's networks and began Phase 3 of her plan. She accessed the facility's prisoner database and began making changes. Not obvious ones. The Union would notice if every human prisoner suddenly disappeared from the records, but small changes, status modifications, security clearance adjustments, transfer authorizations that would move specific prisoners to specific locations. When she was finished, 47 humans in detention facilities across 3 star systems would be flagged for transfer to minimum security work details. Guards would receive official orders to move them to positions where they could access communication systems, manufacturing facilities, and transportation hubs. The guards would follow those orders because the paperwork was perfect. The authorizations came from the right departments, and questioning orders was discouraged in Union military culture. Maya saved her work and began covering her tracks. She erased security logs, modified access records, and planted false data that would make it look like the system intrusions had come from outside the facility. By the time Union investigators sorted through the digital debris, the real damage would be done. The facility's emergency lights were still flashing when Maya made her way back to the storage room. She could hear guards running through the corridors, shouting orders and trying to restore power to the affected systems. Captain Mordun was probably unconscious in the main hallway, his cybernetic spine fried by electromagnetic pulse. The other guards would be focused on medical assistance and damage control. None of them would think to check on the prisoners until morning. Maya climbed back into the maintenance tunnel and began the long crawl back to her dormitory. As she moved through the darkness, she thought about tomorrow's wing-breaking ceremony. She thought about Kresh's broken spirit, about Thane's scarred membranes, about Zephyra's cold silver eyes. Tomorrow, she would kneel on the floor and endure another session with the pain amplifier. She would bite her tongue to keep from screaming. She would glare defiance at her captors, and she would let them think they were breaking down her resistance bit by bit. She wouldn't tell them about the virus spreading through their networks. She wouldn't mention the coded message that was already reaching human cells across the galaxy. She wouldn't explain that 47 of their prisoners were about to become very dangerous assets in very sensitive positions. Maya reached her dormitory and slipped back into her bed just as the emergency lights stopped flashing. Around her, the other prisoners slept on, unaware that their human cellmate had just fired the opening shot in humanity's second war for independence. She closed her eyes and smiled in the darkness. The Galactic Union had spent over a year teaching her exactly how their security systems worked, exactly how their command structure functioned, exactly what their standard operating procedures looked like during a crisis. They'd given her a complete education in their weaknesses while thinking they were breaking her spirit. Tomorrow, Maya would start putting that education to use. But tonight, she dreamed of a very different kind of morning alarm. The kind that would wake up the entire galaxy and remind them that humans might not have wings, but they had something much more dangerous. They had patience, and they held grudges for a very, very long time. 3 weeks after the electromagnetic pulse incident, Lieutenant Zephyra noticed that something was wrong with the human. Not wrong in the way she'd expected. Maya Chen was still defiant during the morning ceremonies, still refused to scream when the pain amplifiers hit her, still glared at her captors with those unsettling brown eyes. But there was something else now, something that made Zephyra's wings twitch with unease. The human was content. "Report from the night shift," Guard Zixmoth announced as he entered the command center. His 6 arms carried data tablets and monitoring equipment, but his expression was troubled. "More equipment failures, 3rd malfunction this week." Zephyra accepted the reports without looking away from the security monitors. On screen after screen, she watched the Reformation Center's daily routines. Prisoners being moved to work details, guards conducting inspections, maintenance crews repairing damaged systems. Everything looked normal, everything followed protocol, but something was fundamentally wrong. "The maintenance logs show recurring issues with the communication arrays," she said, scrolling through the data. "Power fluctuations, data corruption, system resets, all minor problems, but the pattern is unusual." Vexter stomped into the room, his massive frame making the floor vibrate with each step. The Draconis captain had been in a foul mood ever since the night his cybernetic spine had been damaged by an electrical overload. Medical had repaired the hardware, but something about the experience had left him paranoid and angry. "Unusual?" he growled. "There's nothing unusual about aging equipment failing. This facility is 300 cycles old. Systems break down." "Not like this," Zephyra insisted. "Look at the timing. Every failure happens during night shifts. Every malfunction affects different systems, but they're all connected to external communications, and every repair reveals signs of previous tampering that somehow escaped detection. Vexter waved a dismissive claw. You're seeing patterns where none exist, probably stress from dealing with that stubborn human every day. Zephyra's wings tightened against her back. It was true that Maya Chen had become an obsession of sorts. The human's refusal to break according to standard protocols was professionally embarrassing. Most species showed measurable degradation in resistance after 6 months of treatment. The human had been here for over a year and seemed to be getting stronger. Perhaps we should modify her treatment schedule, Zixmoth suggested. Increase the frequency of correction sessions, add psychological pressure techniques. No, Zephyra made the decision without conscious thought, then realized she needed to justify it. The current regimen is producing measurable stress responses. Changing protocols now could reset our progress. It was a lie. There had been no progress with Maya Chen. If anything, the humans seemed to be studying them as much as they were studying her. Those brown eyes tracked every movement, cataloged every procedure, memorized every detail of their operations. But that was impossible. Humans were laborers, not strategists. They'd surrendered without effective resistance when the Union first contacted Earth. Their technology was primitive, their military tactics were crude, and their social structures were easily manipulated. The idea that a single human prisoner could pose any kind of threat was absurd. Wasn't it? Lieutenant, a technician called from across the room. We're receiving priority communication from Command. Admiral Thexnar wants a status report on all facilities in this sector. Zephyra felt her stomach tighten. Priority communications from Fleet Command were never good news. Display the message. The holographic image that materialized above the central console was intimidating even by Union standards. Admiral Thexnar was a void walker, one of the ancient species that had helped found the Galactic Union. His crystalline features were impossible to read, but the urgency in his voice was unmistakable. All facility commanders are to implement immediate security protocols. We have detected coordinated system intrusions across multiple installations. The attacks appear to be originating from internal sources within our own networks. Zephyra felt her wings go numb. Internal sources. The Admiral's image continued. Preliminary investigation suggests the involvement of human subjects. Several facilities have reported equipment failures followed by unauthorized data transfers. We are implementing enhanced monitoring protocols for all human workers effective immediately. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in silence. Vexter was the first to speak, his voice a low rumble of anger. Impossible! Humans don't have the technical knowledge for network intrusion. Their surrender proved they're inferior. But Zephyra was thinking about Maya Chen's behavior over the past weeks. The contentment. The way she'd started asking innocent questions about facility operations during work details. The small smile that sometimes appeared when she thought no one was watching. Bring me the maintenance logs for the past month, she ordered. Cross-reference them with prisoner work assignments and guard duty rosters. As the data compiled, a pattern emerged that made Zephyra's blood turn cold. Every equipment failure corresponded with a night when Maya Chen had been assigned to cleaning duties in the administrative wing. Every system malfunction had occurred during shifts when guard Zixmoth was on duty, Zixmoth, who gambled with criminals and bragged about his past. Every suspicious data transfer had happened when Captain Mordun was patrolling Mordun, whose cybernetic spine could be disrupted by electromagnetic interference. The human, Zephyra whispered, she's been planning this. Vexter laughed, but it sounded forced. Planning what? She's locked in a cell 20 hours a day. She has no access to technology, no way to communicate with the outside, no resources to mount any kind of operation. Zephyra was already moving toward the door. Have the human brought to interrogation room 7, now. Lieutenant, you're being paranoid. Now. 20 minutes later, Maya Chen sat in the interrogation chamber looking exactly like what she was supposed to be, a broken human prisoner in an isolation facility. Her clothes were prison standard, her posture was submissive, and her expression was carefully neutral. If Zephyra hadn't been looking for it, she would have missed the intelligence burning behind those brown eyes. Dr. Maya Chen, Zephyra said, reading from a data tablet that had taken considerable effort to acquire. cybersecurity specialist, 3 doctoral degrees, former head of the Pan-Asian Digital Defense Network. Maya's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes. Recognition, resignation, maybe even relief. Your identification papers listed you as a refugee convoy worker, Zephyra continued. Somehow our background checks missed your actual qualifications, an unfortunate oversight. Not unfortunate, Maya said quietly, intentional. The admission hung in the air between them. Zephyra felt her wings start to tremble. Intentional. The convoy was a cover operation. We were evacuating high-value personnel from the occupation zones. I volunteered to be captured because someone needed to get inside your system. Maya leaned back in her chair, and for the first time in over a year, she looked completely relaxed. Congratulations, Lieutenant. You've been housing humanity's digital warfare specialist for the past 14 months. Vexter burst into the room, his massive frame filling the doorway. What did you do? He roared. What did you do to our networks? Maya smiled, and it was the most terrifying expression Zephyra had ever seen on a human face. I gave them a virus. A really, really good one. It's been spreading through your military networks for 3 weeks now, copying itself into every system it touches. In about 6 hours, it's going to activate simultaneously across every Union installation in this sector. What will it do? Zephyra asked, though she was afraid of the answer. Whatever I programmed it to do, lock you out of your own security systems, reroute your communications, transfer command protocols to new users, open every cell door in every prison, broadcast stored intelligence to the Terran Resistance Network. Maya's smile widened. I had a lot of time to plan while you were breaking wings every morning. Vexter lunged forward, but Zephyra caught his arm. Can we stop it? Of course you can stop it. You just need to shut down every computer, every communication array, every automated system in your entire military network. For about a week. Maybe 2, Maya shrugged. Of course, that would leave you completely defenseless against any coordinated attack that might happen to occur during the downtime. Zephyra felt the world shifting around her. There's going to be an attack. Oh, Lieutenant, there's not going to be an attack. Maya Chen stood up slowly, and despite her small size, she suddenly seemed to fill the room. The attack started over a year ago when you captured me. You've just been too arrogant to notice. In her pocket, Maya's stolen communicator vibrated twice. The signal she'd been waiting for. Across the galaxy, 47 humans were receiving activation codes. Fleet Captain Sarah Martinez was broadcasting override signals to every ship in the Union Merchant Marine. Director Elizabeth Kovach was activating sleeper cells on 36 worlds. And in the Reformation Center, a virus was counting down to 0 hour. The thing about humans, Maya said conversationally, is that we're really good at pretending to be less dangerous than we are. We let you conquer Earth because we knew we weren't ready for a fair fight, but we've been getting ready ever since. Alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Emergency lights bathed everything in red. From somewhere in the distance came the sound of cell doors opening and confused voices asking what was happening. Maya Chen looked at her captors and smiled like a predator that had finally sprung its trap. Class is now in session. The first thing that went wrong for the Galactic Union was the simultaneous failure of every containment system in the Kepler 442b facility. Cell doors slid open with mechanical precision, force fields deactivated, and security protocols reset to factory defaults. Within minutes, over 300 prisoners were wandering the corridors in confusion. The second thing that went wrong was that Maya Chen was no longer pretending to be helpless. She moved through the chaos with purpose, her small human frame weaving between panicked guards and liberated prisoners. The Reformation Center's emergency protocols had been designed to handle riots, technical failures, and escape attempts. They had not been designed to handle a complete system takeover by someone who understood their networks better than they did. Kresh, Maya called out as she spotted the young aviac stumbling through the corridor. His broken wings hung at awkward angles, but his eyes were alert. Can you still fly? The aviac looked at her in confusion. My wings, they're damaged. I haven't flown in months. I'm not talking about your wings, Maya said, grabbing his arm. I'm talking about your hands. Can you operate a control panel? Before Kresh could answer, Guard Captain Mordun rounded the corner with a squad of armed personnel. His cybernetic spine gleamed under the emergency lights, fully repaired from the electromagnetic damage Maya had inflicted weeks earlier. "All prisoners return to your cells immediately," he bellowed, raising his weapon. "This facility is under emergency lockdown." Maya stepped forward, and every prisoner behind her stopped moving. Something in her posture had changed. The submissive stance was gone, replaced by the confident bearing of someone who had planned for this exact moment. "Captain Mordun," she said calmly, "I need you to access your command terminal and verify your current authorization codes." The captain stared at her. "What?" "Your authorization codes. Check them now." Mordun's expression shifted from anger to confusion. He activated his wrist-mounted command interface and began scrolling through his security clearances. His face went pale as he read the display. This can't be right." "What does it say, Captain?" "It says," Mordun's voice cracked, "it says I've been demoted to prisoner status. It says my security clearance has been revoked. It says I'm scheduled for reformation therapy starting immediately." Maya nodded. "And what does it say about me?" Mordun's hands shook as he scrolled further. "It says you've been promoted to acting facility commander. It says all personnel are to follow your direct orders." He looked up at her with dawning horror. "How is this possible?" "Simple," Maya replied. "I spent 14 months learning your system architecture, memorizing your command protocols, and documenting every security vulnerability in this facility. Then I rebuilt your entire database with myself as the primary administrator." Behind her, the liberated prisoners were beginning to understand what was happening. Thane, the scarred Draconis, spread his damaged wings and managed a few feet of awkward flight. Other winged species were testing their movement, discovering that while their wings were still broken, they were no longer trapped. "This is temporary," Mordun snarled. "Command will notice the irregularities. They'll send ships to restore order." Maya smiled. "Captain, you should really check the communication logs." Mordun's face went from pale to ashen as he accessed the facility's outgoing transmissions. For the past 6 hours, the Reformation Center had been sending routine status reports to Union Command. Everything normal. No problems to report. All security protocols functioning within acceptable parameters. Of course, those reports had been generated by Maya's virus, not by the actual staff. "While you've been reading your new assignment orders," Maya continued, "I've been having a very productive conversation with your colleagues across the sector. Lieutenant Zephyra is currently discovering that her access codes have also been modified, as are those of every Union officer within 50 light-years." The scope of what was happening began to dawn on Mordun. "You've compromised the entire sector command." "Oh, Captain, I've done much more than that." Maya activated her own commandeered wrist display and began showing him real-time updates from across Union space. "Facility 7 on Proxima Centauri B just experienced a complete system failure. The prison ship Compliance is currently locked out of its own navigation controls. 3 ore processing stations in the Alpha Centauri system have had their worker transport schedules revised." Each update showed the same pattern: human workers being transferred to positions of greater access, security protocols being modified by seemingly legitimate administrative updates, critical systems suffering mysterious but temporary failures that required human technicians to fix. "The beautiful thing about digital warfare," Maya explained, "is that you don't need to shoot anyone to take their ships away. You just need to convince their computers that you're authorized to be there." Kresh was staring at Maya with something approaching awe. "You planned all of this, from inside a prison cell." "I planned some of it. The Terran Resistance Network planned the rest. Did you really think Earth's government surrendered because they were afraid of a fight? They surrendered because they knew they couldn't win a conventional war, so they chose to fight an unconventional one instead." Maya's communicator chimed with another update. She glanced at the display and smiled. "Excellent. Captain Martinez has successfully taken control of the merchant vessel Asterisk Trade Horizon and its entire cargo fleet. Director Kovac has activated resistance cells on 12 worlds, and Admiral Chen Wei is about to give the Union fleet a very unpleasant surprise." In space above Kepler 442b, the Union patrol ship Righteous Authority received what appeared to be routine orders from Sector Command. The vessel was to break orbit immediately and respond to a distress call from a mining operation in the outer system. The orders came through proper channels, were authenticated with correct codes and were marked with appropriate priority flags. Captain Voxmer never questioned the legitimacy of the transmission. Union military doctrine discouraged independent thinking among junior officers. Orders were to be followed, not analyzed. By the time the righteous authority reached the supposed distress location, it was too far from the planet to interfere with what was happening at the Reformation Center. And the distress call, as it turned out, had been generated by Maya's virus using stolen authentication protocols. "You see, Captain Mordun," Maya said, watching the patrol ship disappear on the tracking display, "the problem with building an empire based on absolute obedience is that your people stop asking questions. They just do what their computers tell them to do. And now their computers work for me." The facility's main corridor was filling with liberated prisoners, all of them looking to Maya for guidance. She had become the focal point of something unprecedented in the galaxy's history, a successful revolt by supposedly inferior species. "What happens now?" Thane asked, his scarred wings trembling with hope. Maya's expression grew serious. "Now we move to Phase 4. We've taken the facility and isolated it from outside interference. We've compromised the sector's command structure and created chaos throughout the Union fleet. But this is still just one planet in a galaxy full of Union worlds." She activated the facility's internal communication system. Her voice echoed through every corridor, every cell block, every guard station. "Attention all personnel. This is Acting Commander Maya Chen. As of now, the Reformation Center is under new management. All prisoners are hereby granted full freedom of movement within the facility. All Union guards are to surrender their weapons and report to Detention Cell Block 7. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. "To my fellow prisoners, you are no longer prisoners. To the guards, you are about to learn what Reformation therapy feels like from the other side. And to Union Command, when you eventually receive this message, class is still in session and you are failing." Maya cut the transmission and turned to address the crowd of freed prisoners gathering around her. Aviax, Draconis, Seraphim, and a dozen other winged species that had been systematically broken and humiliated. "I know your wings are damaged," she said. "I know you've been taught to believe that you're powerless, but I need you to remember something. You are not here because you committed crimes. You are here because you represent everything the Union fears most." She gestured toward the facility's upper levels, where the guard quarters and command centers were located. "They put you in cages not because you were dangerous, but because you were free. And freedom, once experienced, is impossible to completely destroy." Kresh stepped forward, his broken wings straightening with newfound pride. "What do you need us to do?" Maya Chen smiled, and for the first time since her capture, it was a smile of genuine joy rather than predatory satisfaction. "I need you to remember how to fly, not with your wings, with your minds. Because we're about to teach the galaxy that the most dangerous thing you can do to humans is give them time to think." Outside, the twin suns of Kepler 442b were setting behind the facility's perimeter walls. But inside, something much brighter was rising. The age of human submission was ending, and the age of human vengeance was about to begin. 6 months after the fall of the Reformation Center, Admiral Thexnar stood in the wreckage of what had once been the Galactic Union's most secure command facility. The crystalline corridors of the Void Walker homeworld were scarred with blast marks, and the air still smelled of burned electronics and failed dreams. "Report," he commanded, his voice echoing through the empty halls. Captain Yelnara, one of the few surviving officers from the sector command, stepped forward with a data tablet that contained the most comprehensive military defeat in galactic history. 17 star systems have declared independence from the Union, she began. 43 major installations have been captured or destroyed. Our fleet strength is down 78% from pre-crisis levels, and the human resistance network has grown from scattered cells to a coordinated military force capable of simultaneous strikes across multiple sectors. Admiral Thexnar's crystalline features remained impassive, but inside, something that had once been certainty was cracking. How many humans were involved in the initial infiltration? "Our best estimate is 1. The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Finally, the Admiral spoke. "1 human prisoner infiltrated our entire network." "Yes, sir. Dr. Maya Chen's virus propagated through every system it touched." By the time we detected the intrusion, it had compromised databases across 18 worlds. The security breaches allowed coordinated escapes from detention facilities, worker uprisings in manufacturing centers, and the systematic recruitment of what we now know to be an existing resistance network. Admiral Thexnar walked to the command center's main viewing port. Through the transparent aluminum, he could see the orbital defenses that had protected the Void Walker homeworld for 10,000 years. Half of them were now floating debris, destroyed not by enemy fleets, but by their own automated systems turning against them. "Explain to me," he said slowly, "how a species that surrendered without effective resistance suddenly became capable of coordinated galactic warfare." Captain Yelnara consulted her tablet. "Intelligence analysis suggests that the initial surrender was tactical. Earth's governments appear to have sacrificed their planet to scatter human personnel throughout Union space in positions where they could gather intelligence and establish communication networks. They planned this from the beginning." "Yes, sir. We estimate that over 2 million humans have been working as deep cover operatives for the past 2 years. They've been embedded in our merchant fleets, our manufacturing facilities, our communication networks, and our military installations. When Dr. Chen activated the network, they were already in position to strike." The Admiral turned from the viewing port. His species had ruled the galaxy for millennia through superior technology and strategic dominance. They had conquered hundreds of worlds, absorbed dozens of civilizations, and maintained order through overwhelming force and administrative efficiency. They had never encountered an enemy that treated conquest as a recruitment opportunity. "What is the current status of Dr. Chen?" "Unknown, sir. After the liberation of Kepler 442b, she disappeared. Some reports place her on board human vessels operating in the Outer Rim. Others suggest she's established a command base somewhere in the Vega system. Intelligence has been unreliable since our networks were compromised." Admiral Thexnar nodded. Maya Chen had become something between a military commander and a ghost story among Union forces. Reports of her activities came from across the galaxy, often simultaneously from locations that were light years apart. Either she had mastered faster-than-light travel, or the human resistance had grown far beyond what anyone had imagined possible. "Sir," Captain Yelnara continued, "there's something else. We've received a transmission from the human leadership. They're requesting a formal meeting to discuss terms." "Terms of surrender?" "No, sir, terms of coexistence." The Admiral stared at her. "They want to negotiate. According to the message, humanity is prepared to cease hostilities in exchange for the complete independence of all human-controlled systems, the release of all remaining human prisoners, and recognition of Earth as a sovereign world." Admiral Thexnar felt something that he had not experienced in his long life, the realization that his side was losing, not just battles or territory, but the entire conceptual framework that had defined galactic civilization for thousands of years. "What are our options?" Captain Yelnara hesitated before answering. "Strategically, sir, we could attempt to retake lost territory through conventional military action. However, our remaining forces are insufficient to simultaneously garrison multiple rebellious systems while mounting offensive operations. Additionally, human control of our communication networks means that any military movements can be detected and countered before our forces reach their targets." "And diplomatically?" "Diplomatically, sir, we're negotiating from a position of significant weakness. The humans have demonstrated that they can strike anywhere in Union space without warning. They've proven that our technology can be turned against us, and they've shown that our administrative structure is vulnerable to the kind of systematic infiltration that we never thought possible." Admiral Thexnar walked back to the viewing port and looked out at the damaged orbital defenses. Each destroyed platform represented centuries of Void Walker engineering and millennia of galactic dominance. All of it had been brought down by creatures who couldn't even fly. "Schedule the meeting," he said finally. 3 weeks later, Admiral Thexnar found himself in a conference room aboard a neutral merchant vessel in the Tau Ceti system. Across the table sat Dr. Maya Chen, looking exactly like what she had always been, a small human woman with brown eyes and an unremarkable appearance. The difference was that now those eyes held the confidence of someone who had just rewritten the balance of power in the galaxy. "Admiral," Maya said politely, "thank you for agreeing to meet. Dr. Chen? Thexnar studied her carefully, looking for some sign of the strategic genius that had brought the Union to its knees. I must admit, you're not what I expected. Maya smiled. That's been humanity's greatest advantage. Everyone underestimates us because we look harmless. It never occurs to anyone that looking harmless might be a survival trait on a world where everything else was bigger and stronger than us. Your species has caused considerable damage to galactic stability. Our species has liberated several million sentient beings from forced labor and systematic oppression. I suppose your perspective on that depends on which side of the cell door you were standing on. Admiral Thexnar activated his data tablet and displayed a galactic map showing the current political situation. Nearly a quarter of Union space was now marked in red, indicating systems under human or allied control. What do you want? He asked. What we've always wanted, the same thing every species wants, the right to exist without someone else deciding our fate. Maya leaned back in her chair. The Union made a critical error when you conquered Earth. You assumed that defeating our military meant breaking our spirit. You didn't understand that humans have been conquering more dangerous things than you for our entire evolutionary history. Such as ice ages, predators that could kill us with a single blow, diseases that wiped out entire populations, environments that were actively trying to kill us every single day. Maya's expression grew serious. We didn't become the dominant species on Earth because we were the strongest or the fastest. We became dominant because we were too stubborn to give up and too clever to keep making the same mistakes. Admiral Thexnar felt something shift in his understanding. The surrender was never a surrender at all. The surrender was a tactical retreat, followed by the longest recruitment drive in human history. You gave us access to your entire civilization, and then forgot to watch us while we learned how it worked. Maya smiled. Did you really think we were just going to accept permanent servitude to beings who break sentient creatures for entertainment? The Admiral looked at the galactic map again. The red zones weren't randomly distributed. They formed a rough sphere centered on Earth, with strategic corridors extending toward major trade routes and industrial centers. It was the shape of an expanding empire. This won't end with independence, will it? He said. That depends entirely on you, Maya replied. Humans are remarkably good at peaceful coexistence when we're treated as equals. We're also remarkably good at warfare when we're not. The choice is yours. Admiral Thexnar stared across the table at the human who had single-handedly ended the age of Galactic Union dominance. In her unremarkable features, he saw something that terrified him more than any weapon or warship. He saw patience, the kind of patience that could wait years for the right opportunity, the kind of patience that could turn conquest into recruitment and defeat into victory, the kind of patience that could hold a grudge for however long it took to settle the score. Very well, Dr. Chen, he said finally. Let's discuss terms. Maya Chen smiled, and somewhere in that smile was the echo of every morning alarm that had torn her from sleep, every session with the pain amplifier, every broken wing she had watched heal just enough to be broken again. I thought you'd never ask, she said. And in the silence that followed, the galaxy learned that the most dangerous thing you can do to humans is give them a reason to get creative about revenge. The lesson would be remembered for a very long time.